Well, good morning, everybody. Jeff Slakey and Spencer Hughes here on the Daybreak Show. Mondays, we check in with the sheriff and the sheriff sit-down, Mason County Sheriff Casey Salisbury. Good morning, Casey.
Morning.
You got a couple great guests for us today. Director of MACECOM Mike Evans and Beau Bakken from the North Mason Regional Fire Authority. Is that right?
That's correct. Beau, I thought I'd bring each of them on and have them comment. First of all, I just to throw out of kudos to the comm center down there where Mike's at. Dispatch down there. They, last night there was a couple. Friday night, a few intense type calls that they all come in at once. It's very challenging down there. I was going to have Mike speak to the dispatch center, and I also wanted Chief Bakken to speak to. Sometimes calls aren't necessarily calls that belong at 911, and we're getting a lot of those, and it kind of disrupts fire service and EMS as well. So I think maybe starting off with Director Evans for a moment, and then go to Beau.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, thanks for being on. And tell us a little bit about the call volumes into MACECOM since coronavirus kind of took hold in our community. Have you seen a big uptick in calls, and what are those types of calls?
Surprisingly, we actually have seen a decrease in overall call volume. This time of year, we run about 280 calls a day, and we're running about 230 or so. And fire and law enforcement is seeing the same thing. As the sheriff mentioned, that doesn't get spread out evenly across the 24-hour day.
Right.
They still have a tendency to get pretty slammed when things go south. But overall, the call volume is a little low. But also, like the sheriff mentioned, there's times, particularly when the governor puts out, something new. Unfortunately, we get at the same time at a local level. We get at the same time that everybody else does. Yeah. And so, oftentimes, people expect 911 to have some kind of insight as to, the stay-at-home information, et cetera. And early on, we don't. We get it just like everybody else does. So people will call either 911 or even the non-emergency line and expect us to have some answers that we don't always have.
Oh, wow. Treating it almost like 411.
Yeah, and we're trying to, send them in the right direction, and I get that, that desire for information. But, unfortunately, again, we don't get it any sooner than everybody else. So, that could provide a little bit of a challenge. But other than that, we're doing okay. It's just, we're rolling into summer, so it always gets a little busier for us. And then, there are certainly times where it just gets really hectic in there.
Are you getting calls from folks saying, hey, I saw a large group of people gathered?
We get a few of those. In talking with the sheriff, that those are educational opportunities for us locally. Yeah. And so, our goal is to educate and not, provide some kind of a law enforcement action if we can. And so, but yeah, we get a few of those, not as many as you might think.
And then I know, too, when you get the calls come into dispatch, you have to quickly kind of decide what happens next. And that's where kind of Beau Bakken from North Mason comes in if the calls are up in the north part of the county. And there are obviously opportunities and reasons to call 911, but there are some reasons that 911 should not be used. And it really puts a strain on the resources for fire authorities like North Mason. Beau, what have you had to do since coronavirus hit the Belfair area, north part of the county? Have you been seeing kind of you guys having to respond to calls that may not necessarily be 911 type calls?
Yes and no. What we're seeing is that we are getting calls of folks that believe that they're symptomatic. They're they're watching the local news. They're seeing the potential for some symptoms that they may have that kind of mimic. And then of course the information is getting out. But where exactly do you go to get testing? Yeah. Where do you go to get seen and helped and whatnot? And sometimes the only portal people really know is the 911 system, and they're using us for that in certain circumstances. But the concern that I actually have is almost kind of the opposite. One of the things that we're seeing in the emergency medical services realm is that our call volume has gone down significantly. And that's not just at the fire authority. That's at the fire authority, it's at the Mason County, and that's actually across the nation. There are some EMS systems that are showing call volumes down by as much as 30%. There are some really good reasons as to why that's happening. We have people staying at home. We don't have people out on the road. We don't have people out recreating, and that is leading to some of the reduction in call volume. But the more concerning piece that I believe is happening, it's hard to get numbers wrapped around this, but there is a legitimate fear of, with the COVID-19 emphasis on, is the hospital a safe place to go? Is the, having medical responders showing up at my doorstep? Am I putting my family in jeopardy with these responders that are touching and interacting with other patients? And the concern with that is that there is a potential that people are not looking and kind of overlooking what could be very serious emergency medical incidents. And so, hey, I don't want to go to the emergency room, so I'm just going to kind of, not pay attention to this abdominal pain or the chest pain that I have. Gosh, all of a sudden, I'm not going to pay attention to that because of the fear of COVID-19. Dr. Gushy, in one of our reports today at Mason General, actually brought up the fact that as far as myocardial infarctions that they have coming through the emergency room at Mason General, and then also catheterizations, is down significantly. That doesn't mean that there's less heart attacks happening. Actually, a lot of people do survive very mild heart attacks. It just means that there's a potential that people aren't coming and getting the care that they need for that. So one of the things that we want to be very mindful of emergency services is we are still here. Do not put those things on the back burner. Don't put those life-threatening situations out of mind. And the other thing that came up actually in a story in our meetings today was the fact that there are some people that don't want to bother the 911 system. They have an injury, they have an illness, and go, oh gosh, those emergency responders must be dealing with much more important things than what I've got going on. I don't want to bother them. That couldn't be farther from the truth. We are here. We want to make sure we're getting people taken care of. And what I can tell you is that we've got procedures and practices in place, both at the emergency room and also in our emergency services community, for making sure that our facilities are ridiculously safe for everybody that encounters them. One of the things that was talked about was the jack-in-a-box situation with the E. coli years ago. Shortly after that, there probably wasn't a safer place to eat, the jack-in-a-box. And it's very similar, in the hospitals and in our emergency rigs and working with our crews. There's probably never been a safer time to be in those facilities with the amount of practices and the amount of procedures that are in place to keep people safe. So use the 911 system. We're there. Do not overlook life-threatening conditions, even things that are potentially life-threatening. You're not a burden on the system. Please use us. We're there and available.
And then, Mike, back to you. Talk to me a little bit about how MACECOM has been set up or maybe reconfigured to allow for everyone to have enough space in between each other.
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, nothing's changed. They've got some separation already in there, just to enable them to do their day in and day out job.
Okay.
We check their temperature. They when they arrive, they clean the workspace before they start, and there's quite a bit of cleaning and disinfecting that goes on during the day as well. So. Like Beau said, we're pretty hypersensitive to it, and so just like everybody else. And so I think, for us, being at work is probably safer than being out in public,
sure.
Going to get groceries or whatever. So we've done a lot internally, again, consistent with what everybody else is doing.
We talked with Sheriff Salisbury and Chief Moody last week, and, they were saying one or two, if heaven forbid this gets into law enforcement and the professionals in Mason County, one or two instances can really hamper the effectiveness of the responses with people. You guys have enough staff at MACECOM, and you feel like everything is good to go in the event that something happens?
Well, I would say much like every other director in the county, we never have enough staff,
right.
But we also have some options. We've worked hard with our regional partners, Thurston, Lewis, Grace Harbor, Pacific counties, to have a capability there to be able to do some things remotely, so that if one comm center gets hit hard, there's the ability to answer phones or dispatch remotely from each one of those. So we've been working hard on that for the past 3 or 4 years. And so that capability is there that could shore things up if any one of us get hit hard.
Important to remember for folks out there that 911 services are still operational and taking phone calls. And then the crews, not only in law enforcement, but in fire and medical, are safe and ready to come assist you as needed here during the Sheriff Sit-Down conversation this morning. Sheriff Salisbury, also Director of MACECOM Mike Evans, and Beau Bakken from the North Mason Regional Fire Authority, kind of updating us on some of the things happening elsewhere around the county. Thank you so much, guys, and stay safe out there, and we'll catch up again real soon.
Take care, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.